one of the things I wanted to cover in this class is how applications normally work. And first of all, let's talk about how a desktop application used to work. Um, but before we even get to that, let's talk about what they used to do for applications. You used to have a file, and there are a lot of applications that still work this way. And the file would get read by a program, and that program would then in turn produce another output. And this is what we basically call batch processing. And your banks still do this. And this is 1960s to 1980 type technology. And this is still a useful model. We're going to write at least one program that does this kind of a model. And basically, it's simple. There isn't much user interface. And that's the way it worked. I mean, there are vast machines that have been built specifically for this, like Teradata, that is specifically built for doing this kind of processing. And lots of applications still do this. It's a simple way to build things. So this is a useful model to work with. But then we come along to about 1980 and we start seeing desktop graphical user interfaces, Windows 3.1. And in this window, we have some sort of a little button here. The program is running and it goes out there and it does some things and then it returns. And eventually, it does some things like it reads a file that's on the local system. And later it may write back to that file. But we've got this different kind of processing that involves interaction with the user and a user interface. So we probably are not going to write one like this. This kind of a application is basically disappearing. And there are a few people still building these, but this is the Windows system architecture, and lots of desktop applications are built. If you use Excel, this is an example of this kind of a thing. But on the other hand, there are tools like Google Sheets. It doesn't work this way. And that's the one we're going to talk about, is how we build modern applications. So this is easy and useful, and there's a place for it. This, nobody's building. Or if they are, it is extremely rare. And you still can, but it just isn't done in practice. The reason why this has disappeared is these are extremely hard to deploy, hard to maintain, and hard to build. And this entire process right here, this event loop where you have some button that you push, it results in some change over here, and it comes back. That is an extremely hard to test, hard to design thing. So these are disappearing in favor of a web app. Now, some of you have, say, Discord, okay, or Slack, and you have it installed on your computer. But in actuality, what you're running is still a web application. It's still a web page. It looks like it's a desktop application. But what it's doing is you have a web page out here that instead of talking to the web, it's talking to a service on your computer that's talking to the world, okay? But it's still on your computer and it's doing it this way, okay? Where your web page on your screen is talking to a service running on your computer that's actually a web page, and that service is then talking to the outside world. Now, this kind of an application looks like a desktop application, but it isn't. It's a web app. And there's increasingly complex and useful ways to do this kind down here. Now, the difference here is that when we take this front end and we serialize all the pieces out here to become something we process and then return, the difficulties in testing tend to disappear and the complexity in testing is removed. And consequently, when we want to do something like save a file, what we do is we send a message over here and then this guy writes a file. But the ability to test and the ability to understand what it's doing is vastly better. So this is a better development environment than this. And how much better? Some people have run some tests, and they think that if it takes 10 units of time to build this, it'll take 1 to 2 units of time to build this. So that's a big improvement in terms of productivity. And also, the other thing is that out of this, about this much of your application is duplicated with running on the web. So it's not just that it takes 1 to 2 times as much to build this, it takes 1 to 2 times as much to build this, and 95% of your code is reusable. And over here, the same thing. This stuff over here is also reusable. So the net result is this takes way, way less, and less testing, less time to build. People build these. So there are applications. Some of you in this class are using Atom, an editor. It works this way. I mentioned Discord, Slack. And there are applications that were built this way that have become this. Like, I'm trying to think of one. I don't know one, but I have seen applications where they are porting them. And these are big commercial applications where they're rewriting them to be down here instead of